All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, with the start of the college football season right around the corner, who is going to win the Big 12 conference? Now, of course, when you typically think about winning the Big 12, you think about the Oklahoma Sooners, and rightfully so, as Oklahoma has claimed 14 Big 12 championships since the league was formed in 1996. And it's Oklahoma and everybody else in this conference. But for the Sooners, this is definitely going to be a year of transition. They were shocked, as was the majority of the college football world, when Lincoln Riley decided to leave OU in favor of USC, which means that obviously the Sooners had to go out and get a new head coach. Now, Brent Venables knows what it takes to succeed at Oklahoma, as he was a defensive coordinator for many years under former Oklahoma head coach Bob Stoops. Now, most recently, Venables has been the defensive coordinator at Clemson, and under his tenure, or during his tenure there, rather, the Tigers had one of the better defensive units in the nation. And of course, the proof is in the pudding as Clemson won a pair of national championships. So Venables is coming to Oklahoma, and he also has to deal with the transfer bug because the Sooners lost both of their quarterbacks from last year. Spencer Rattler is now at South Carolina, while Caleb Williams followed Riley to USC. So enter Dylan Gabriel, the UCF transfer at quarterback for Oklahoma. Now, you think about this Oklahoma offense over the years, whether it was Lincoln Riley or before him, Bob Stoops, there was always speed and talent at the wide receiver position, and you still have another stud there in Marvin Mims, who could be an impact player for this offense this year. Now, an interesting schedule for Oklahoma, some of the highlights of the schedule, of course, they're at Nebraska on the 17th of September. And this is a big game. And of course, obviously, there was a time when the Nebraska Oklahoma game on Thanksgiving weekend typically had national championship implications from it when these two were members of the Big Eight Conference. Oklahoma will be at TCU on the 1st of October. Of course, their yearly meeting in Dallas with Texas on the 8th of October, at Iowa State on the 29th of October. And you always want to circle that game because in recent years, if there's been a team that consistently gives the Sooners problems in the Big 12, it's been the Cyclones. And then, of course, Bedlam on the 19th of November. And speaking of the Oklahoma State Cowboys and Bedlam, they were so close, and I mean within an inch, literally, of winning the Big 12 championship last year. They want to definitely try to come back and claim that trophy under head coach Mike Gundy. Now, the Cowboys did lose a ton of talent from a very talented defense last year that was fourth in the nation, but you still have a solid offense led by senior quarterback Spencer Sanders and junior wide receiver Brennan Presley. Now, for the Cowboys, a big one on the 1st of October when they travel to Waco to take on Baylor. A lot of people feel that the Bears have what it takes to go back and repeat as Big 12 champs. Oklahoma State will be at TCU on the 15th of October. They host Texas on the 22nd of October, which is another big game. And then, of course, Bedlam when they travel to to Norman to take on the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, the Texas Longhorns, they are looking like they're building steam under head coach Steve Sarkisian, and that is going to be important as they definitely want to make some noise in the Big 12. And of course, they, like Oklahoma, will be partying for the SEC real soon. But nonetheless, Steve Sarkisian has always been a solid recruiter, whether he was at USC, Washington, or even, during his time as an assistant under Nick Saban in Alabama. And you have some talent here at Texas. You look at sophomore quarterback Hudson Card, definitely one of the better playmakers at the position in the conference. And of course, you have a workhorse running back and junior running back, Bijan Robinson. And this guy, plain and simple, You give him the football and you get out of his way. Texas does have some talent at the wide receiver position in Xavier Worthy. And how is he going to really fit into this passing game this year for the Longhorns? Now, Texas definitely has to improve on defense as they were 100th in the nation in total defense last year. But one player to definitely keep an eye on is middle linebacker Luke Brockermeyer. Now, for Texas, they step out of conference in what will be an SEC preview in recent years when they host in the coming years when they host Alabama on the 10th of September. Of course, I talked about them meeting Oklahoma in Dallas on the 8th of October. They're at Oklahoma State on the 22nd of October. They host TCU on the 12th of November, and then they finish off with Baylor on the 25th of November. Now, Iowa State, the expectations were high for the Cyclones last year. They didn't live up to it, but they still definitely have the potential to make some noise in the Big 12 this year. Some names that people have become familiar with this Iowa State program have moved on. No more Brock Purdy at quarterback, as it's Hunter Decker's time now. And of course, no more Brees Hall at running back, as it is the time for Jarrell Brock to get some carries. But you still have wide receiver Xavier Hutchinson and this Matt Campbell offense, and then Will McDonald the fourth rushing the passer. This guy is relentless. He has a potential to be the Big 12 Conference's Defensive Player of the Year this coming season, and I think he's going to wreak havoc on a lot of opposing offensive lines once again in the Big 12. Now, of course, the Cyclones always have their in-state battle in September with Iowa out of the Big Ten. This time it will be in Iowa City on the 24th of September. Iowa State will host Baylor. They're at Texas on the 15th of October. They host Oklahoma on the 29th of October. And like I said, in recent years, Iowa State has given the Sooners fits. And then they're at Oklahoma State on the 12th of November. So these are just some of the key games to keep an eye on this year for the Cyclones. Now, for Baylor, Baylor comes into this season, obviously, as the defending Big 12 champs. And there are people out there who feel that the Bears can go out there and repeat. And for Dave Aranda, Baylor's head coach, he has done a good job in a very small period of time building off of what his predecessor, Matt Rule, started. Now, Baylor won 12 games last season. And, if they do it again, more than likely, well, not more than likely, obviously, they will be Big 12 champs and potentially in the college football playoff. Now, the Bears do have a veteran offensive line full of grad students and seniors. And defensively, which is Aranda's bread and butter, he has some talent, which is led by senior middle linebacker Dylan Doyle. Now, on the 24th of September, I talked about the Iowa State game with Baylor. This is big because it's the first conference game for the Bears, and you definitely want to get things started on the right foot. They will host Oklahoma on the 1st of October. And that's big because we remember the battle that both of these two clubs had last year in Arlington in the Big 12 championship game. And then another big one to keep an eye on when the Bears travel to Texas on the 25th of November. Now, for this TCU Horned Frogs, it's a new era as Sonny Dykes is now going to be the head football coach in Fort Worth. Of course, TCU surprising people when they let go Gary Patterson after his long tenure there last year. But now they bring in Sonny Dykes. And when you think about Sonny Dykes, it's all about his offense, whether he was at SMU or Cal. Make no mistake about it. The Horned Frogs will definitely be slinging the football up and down the field. Quarterback Max Duggan, he's a veteran in this TCU program, and now he just has to get adjusted to a new system. And if he could get adjusted to Dykes's system, he will definitely have a big time year for TCU. Middle linebacker D Winters, what type of impact is he going to have? And you think about it, and I say that because typically with Sonny Dykes' teams, they're heavy on the offense and light on the defense. So, and you think about what Gary Patterson did for so long at TCU with the defensive side of the ball. So let's see how the transition period works in Fort Worth for the Horned Frogs. But nonetheless, you look at the schedule for TCU this year, some highlights at Colorado out of the Pac 12 on September 2nd, and then at SMU on the 24th of September. And that's going to be interesting because Sonny Dykes just left SMU to take over at TCU. Now, for the K State Wildcats, I think they're going to be up and down this season, but I think that they'll be able to finish with a winning record and get to a bowl game, but I'm not sure how much noise they'll be able to make in the Big 12. For the Red Raiders of Texas Tech, I think it's really going to be an uphill battle, and the same could be said for the Jayhawks of Kansas. And finally, with the West Virginia Mountaineers, Neil Brown has been building, and hopefully, for his sake and the sake of the Mountaineers, they can break through and make some noise in the Big 12 this year. One thing that you have at quarterback, you have JT Daniels, a former USC and Georgia quarterback. And, he's obviously racking up the frequent flyer miles, traveling around the country. But nonetheless, I think has finally found a home in Morgantown, and he can have an effect on this offense this year for the Mountaineers. Now, West Virginia begins the season by traveling to Pitt for the backyard brawl, and of course, once upon a time, when West Virginia and Pitt were Indies, as well as being in the Big East, this was a big time game, and it's good to see that this rivalry has finally been renewed. West Virginia will take on another former Big East foe when they travel to take on the Virginia Tech Hokies on the 22nd of September. The Mountaineers are at Texas on the 1st of October. And another key game to watch out for West Virginia will be when they host Oklahoma on the 12th of November. So when it's all said and done, I think the key players this year in the Big 12, even though Oklahoma is going through a transition period, you never write them off. I think that the Cowboys and Mike Gundy will once again be towards the top of the class, if you will, in the Big 12. Look out for Texas. I think Texas is going to make some strides this year under Steve Sarkisian. And then, of course, the defending champs, Baylor. But when it's all said and done, I think the two teams that get to Arlington for the Big 12 championship game, I'm going with Oklahoma State and I'm going with Texas. And I'm going to take the Longhorns to get the Big 12 championship. It's one of those, you think about it with Texas and you think about them being one of the top programs and premier programs for so many years in the nation. And obviously, they took a step back, or they've taken a step back in recent years. But nonetheless, they've only won the Big 12 three times. So, like I said, they're getting ready to prep to leave the conference and join the SEC. So why not, finish up your tenure there on a positive note? And with that said, I think the Horns get it done and get the Big 12 championship. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.